What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Magic the Conversation. On this week's episode, we will be going over the 17th expansion in the Magic the Gathering series, and that is known as Urza's Destiny. Urza's Destiny was released in June of 1999. I was still in high school when the set came out. I think I was a freshman. And the expansion symbol for Urza's Destiny is a beaker or a flask. Now, with the completion of the Weatherlight from Urza's Saga and Urza's Legacy, all his the artifacts, the legacy weapon, Karn, Urza built everything that he needed to build to have the Skyship Weatherlight engineered. Now he is working on genetic manipulation, and he creates a new race, so to speak, his own army in the upcoming battle with the Phyrexians. Hey, Carlos. Yeah, it's no problem that you have no knowledge of the game. That's why I'm doing these videos for people who might be interested, or if they like fantasy, different stories. Magic has a ton of different stories in its game. It's been around for a long time, since 1992, 1993 even. So I do these streams, these videos, talk about each set, each expansion, the story behind it, and the cards as well. And speaking of the cards, we will start going on with the show. And the first card we have is Academy Rector. Oh yes, Carlos. I've been waiting for collaboration sets for so long, and we finally got them. Fallout got one. Lord of the Rings got one. Warhammer got one. Dungeons and Dragons got one. It's a great game. I highly recommend if you like tabletop or card games. Magic is the greatest of all time. All right, the first card of the Urza's Destiny set is Academy Rector. When Academy Rector is put into a graveyard from play, you may remove it from the game. If you do, you have to search your library for any enchantment card and put it directly into play. Then shuffle your library. This is really good because you can get any enchantment you want, no matter what its mana cost, and put it out onto the battlefield. There are some really strong enchantments in the game today, and this is a way for you to cheat it out onto the battlefield, so to speak. Aether Sting, 4-mana enchantment for red. Whenever one of your opponents plays a creature spell, Aether Sting deals 1 damage to that player. When Gatha fell, he was called to account for each abomination he created. Now, what Urza, in his academy, he was starting to do his genetic experiments with manipulations, and one of his top bioengineers was Gotha, and Gotha is the person in the artwork who's getting his face shocked by the wrestler that Carlos is mentioning in the artwork. Gatha ends up experimenting on a race of barbarians called the Keldons, and he actually makes them super strong, way stronger than any person, to the point where they become monsters themselves. This isn't what Urza was looking for, because Urza still wants a human army that can be that's disciplined, civilized, can be controlled. Gatha's experiments end up being just like monstrosities, and they eventually get the attention of the Phyrexians. Gatha leaves the academy. He cuts ties with Urza to continue his own experiments. Because, like I said, Urza did not agree. He says, the work you're doing here, that's not what I'm looking for. Gatha says Urza's too weak and a hypocrite, so they both go their separate ways. Gatha ends up getting the stronger army, but it's to the point where the Phyrexians feel threatened by it, and they attack his laboratory. Gatha ends up committing suicide with his champion, the strongest of his barbarian Keldon race. They jump off a cliff to kill themselves just so the Phyrexians don't get any information from him. They don't get any of his notes. He destroys all his stuff, and it's a tragic end for Gotham. Ancient Silverback, 6 mana, 6/5 ape. It's like King Kong. He's using his. He pulled a tree to smack this one Phyrexian in the face. It's a 6/5, which is pretty good, and it has regeneration, which is also really good. The Phyrexian killing machines couldn't have known the seriousness of their mistake in wounding the ape. They'd never seen it angry. Yeah, the lore of the game does get dark. There is usually there's a villain or villains. In this case, currently the villain are the Phyrexians. They are a cyborg, undead, so to speak, race that they only exist to end all life in every world. And they have the technology to invade other worlds, and that is what they're trying to do. And the heroes in this game are trying to band together to make sure this doesn't happen. Prentice Necromancer. Cost 2. It's a 1/1. You can pay a black and tap it. You sacrifice it. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature gains haste. However, at the end of the turn, you have to sacrifice it. I don't like that you have to sacrifice the creature at the end of the turn, even though it is a very cheap graveyard reanimation card. I don't like that you lose a creature at the end. We have a undead wizard here reanimating the skeleton. Archery training. It's a aura that goes on a creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put an arrow counter on archery training. Enchanted creature gains tap. This creature deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature, where X is the number of arrow counters on archery training. It makes any of your creatures an archer, so to speak. This reminds you of Inscription. I never heard of Inscription. I'll have to check it out. Attrition, 3 mana enchantment. Pay a black. Sacrifice one of your creatures to destroy target non-black creature. I will trade life for life with the insurgents. Our resources, unlike theirs, are limitless. Deval, the Evankar of Wrath. Here it shows some elves fighting off one of their Phyrexians. Aura Thief, 4 mana illusion. It's a 2/2 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, put all enchantments from all graveyards. No. When Aura Thief is put into a graveyard from play, you gain control of all enchantments. So if your opponent has really good enchantments out, this guy, once he dies, can steal them from everybody. I'll be sure to check it out, Carlos. Thanks for the recommendation. Blizzard Elemental, 7 mana, 5/5 flying. You can pay 4 mana to untap it at any time. Students who had seen Rain argue with Urza were certain she had summoned it to make him seem warmer by comparison. Rain is the chancellor at the academy. She ends up marrying Baron. Baron is the master wizard at the academy as well, and Urza's best friend. Hey, Kristen, they're not in the dryer yet, but I'll make sure they do go in there. Bloodshot Cyclops, 6 mana, 4/4. You can tap it to sacrifice a creature. Bloodshot Cyclops deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. Here it shows the Cyclops throwing a goblin at whoever. After their first encounter, the goblins named him Chuck. I use this Cyclops a lot with with in my fire breathing deck, I would make my creatures attack power be as strong as possible, and then I would end up sacrificing them with the Cyclops to deal as much damage to my opponent as I could. Body Snatcher, 4 mana 2/2 minion. When it comes into play, you may discard a creature card from your hand. If you don't, you have to remove the Body Snatcher from the game. When Body Snatcher dies, remove it from the game and return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. The set does have a lot of creature reanimation in it. In order to play Body Snatcher, you do have to discard a creature card in your hand to use it. But then once the Body Snatcher dies, you can bring that creature back onto the battlefield. Braidwood Cup. It's a 3-mana artifact. Each turn you can tap it to gain 1 life. I think it no accident that every civilized people has discovered the art of distillation. Quote from Ruffalo's of Llanowar. Here we have some Yavimaya and Llanowar elves enjoying some alcohol, it looks like. Braidwood Sextant. For 1 mana artifact, pay 2, tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, and then put it into your hand. Shuffle your library. Good if you are needing land. Brass Secretary. Is he a golem? He's a construct. 3 mana 2/1. He reminds me of C3PO in a way. You can pay 2 and sacrifice him to draw a card. The students disliked the secretary for its unfailing memory until they discovered it could not dodge thrown objects. Poor secretary. I could imagine the students at the academy throwing all kinds of stuff at him. Brine Seer, 4 mana 1/1. You could pay 3 and tap it. Reveal any number of blue cards in your hand. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 mana for each card revealed in this way. Each color in this set gets a seer, and they all do like the same where you reveal the corresponding color, and it does an effect based on how many cards you reveal. Brine Seer looks a little crazy. Bubbling Beebles, 5 mana 3/3. They are unblockable if the defending player controls an enchantment. Chancellor Rain canceled the annual Beeble Roast. I should have married a crueler woman named Baron. Beebles are like magic gerbils, and they're kind of like a funny creature in the game. They're not strong, but they can be annoying. Bubbling Muck. Until end of turn, whenever a player taps a swamp, it produces an additional black mana. So it's a quick temporary boost to your lands, to your swamps. The Muck claims 100 living things for each meager treasure it spews forth. Caltrops. Whenever a creature attacks, Caltrops deals 1 damage to it. So if the creature has 1 toughness, it's going to die, and it won't do any damage at all to the opponent. Toward the end, Gatha struggled to keep his experiments in and his patrons out. And we have this guy trying to tiptoe and not step on any of these caltrops. Caltrops were used a lot in medieval times as a way to stop horseback riders, even horses, because these could pierce a horse's hoof, and it would most likely cause the horse to buck in pain, usually sending the rider to the ground, and the rider would most likely be impaled by the caltrops as well. Capetian Knight, 2 mana 1/1 with first strike, pay 2. Capetian Knight gets power +1 until end of turn. Few warriors dare to challenge a Knight of Capetian. Should one do so, there is 1 fewer. The Capetian Knights, Urza took some of their blood to make... Urza eventually does create his superior race called the Metathron. They have blue skin and white hair. And one of the characters he ends up actually... He's kind of like crafts the perfect human. And that ends up being Gerard. Because like I said, we went back in time from the Tempest block, where Gerard is the main hero in that set. This is how Gerard was born, so to speak. Hey, Jameson, welcome in. Yeah, Capetian Knight, I do like this card a lot. The artwork looks really cool. in a lot of games where you can like choose different weapons, I almost never use a sword and shield. I like to use either two swords or two daggers. I like dual wielding weapons. Hey, Flobo23, welcome in. So currently, Capuchin Knight is my favorite card in the set. Capuchin Standard, he looks like the Big Show. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. You can pay 2 and sacrifice the enchantment to draw a card. Benalia has no need for peacocks to serve as a symbol of vanity. The Capuchins strut more proudly than any bird. As I said, the Capuchins were the best as far as they were the strongest knights. They were just a really good athletic city people, and that's why Urza had sampled some of their blood and DNA to assist him in creating his super race. Yep, a poor man cycling. There'll be a lot of cards like this in the set if I remember correctly. Here's Capuchin Templar. He's kind of like the opposite of Capuchin Knight, as I mentioned, where the Knight had two swords. The Templar has a sword and shield, and for every white you pay, you increase his toughness by 1. Their shields are Benalia's outermost battlements. Carnival of Souls. I remember when I saw this enchantment, I'm like, this card sucks. Whenever a creature comes into play, you lose 1 life and add 1 black mana to your mana pool. I still think it sucks. I'm sure there's a combo with this card out there, but I don't want to lose 1 life every time a creature enters the battlefield. Because even on your opponent's turn, if they're for every creature they play, you're losing 1 life. Yeah, you do get a black mana, but if you don't have any instants in your hand to use, that mana goes to waste. Deval, blast those elves. Deval, transport those troops. No one cares that today's my birthday. So Deval was an old man, and he was dying, and he betrayed his town and pretty much joined the Phyrexians, and the Phyrexians promised him immortality, and they ended up killing or turning all his townsfolk into Phyrexians themselves. And he's kind of a coward. He's second in command when it comes to trying to beat Rule Wrath. This was before Volrath became the Evankar of Wrath. Deval was second in command, and his commanding officer, I think his name was Krieg. He ends up fighting the Keldons and gets wounded severely, so Deval takes over. But then Deval ends when Krieg finally heals back to full health. There's an accident, and Deval ends up being crushed under some flowstone, and Krieg pretty much leaves him to die there. The art is pretty cool. I do agree with you, Flobo. Oh, I remember this card's artwork because I thought this was one of the coolest looking creatures I've ever seen. Chime of Night. When Chime of Night is put into a graveyard from play, destroy target non-black creature. So you put it on one of your creatures, and then if that creature dies or if the enchantment dies, you get to destroy any non-black creature. Many sent to serve Deval carried such instruments as if to remind him who their true masters were. Here's Deval in the background. Like I said, he's like a cowardly old man. And these monstrosities rule over him still. I know, look at them chompers. Cinder Seer. This is the red seer. Reveal any number of red cards in your hand to deal X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of cards revealed in this way. You really love those times. Yep. Kolos Yearling. 3 mana, 1/1 with Mountain Walk. Kolos are like giant mountain goats. The Keldons usually use them as mounts. And it has fire breathing. A steed grows with its rider. Compost. Green enchantment. Whenever a black card is put into one of your opponent's graveyards, you may draw a card. A fruit must rot before its seed can sprout. Yavimaya saying. So this is a good sideboard card against black. Covetous Dragon, 5 mana, 6/5 flying. If at any point you don't control any artifacts, you must sacrifice the Covetous Dragon. Gatha survived as long as he did by giving all Keld's predators exactly what they wanted. The dragon's face looks weird for a dragon, but I remember one of my friends had an artifact deck. He would just have a lot of artifact ramping cards, like the Power Stones, the Diamonds, and then he would rush out this dragon on like the 4th turn, and a 6/5 flying on the 4th turn. If you don't have any kill spells in your hands, you would definitely be defeated. Oh yeah, Kai Bud. Yep, you're right. Kai Bud did have this in his championship deck. I remember it had Grim Monolith, Voltaic Key, Wildfire. Oh, I hated Wildfire when that happened. The artwork, Jameson says the art has really changed a lot. It seems way back in the day. Not that it's terrible now, just more originality. People. Yep, those championship decks were gold bordered. But yeah, I noticed like they're a group of the illustrators, the artists that illustrate the cards for Magic. There was like about, I would say, a handful of them at a time, and then after so many years, they would get an entirely new handful of artists for the next couple of years, and so on and so forth. As each time an expansion and block went, they got new artists for each one. No problem, Carlos. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing streams like this, just so I can explain like what you're seeing on the screen. Disappear, 4 mana, it goes on a creature. You can pay blue, return enchanted creature, and disappear to their owner's hands. If at first you don't succeed, run away and hide. And it shows 3 drakes. This one drake is disappearing, as the card says. I'm sure there's easier ways to return creatures to your owner's hands, like capsize. Disappear is like a slow way of doing that. But you can choose different targets each time. Disease Carriers, 4 mana, 2/2 rat. When Disease Carriers die, target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Wrath is a disease all its inhabitants carry. That's one creepy looking rat. I do remember that card as well. Donate, 3 mana, target player gains control of target permanent you control. Campus pranksters initiate new students with the old Beeble Bomb routine. He had a little jar of Beebles in it, and he threw it on this. I don't know if it's another student or professor, but you can see the Beebles are all over him. Now, Donate by itself is a horrible card. Why would you want to give your opponent a card? But there are so many good combos with Donate. Forbidden Crypt that I had mentioned in the Mirage video was one of the best ones to do, because you can no longer, the opponent's not going to be able to draw cards from their library anymore. They're forced to draw cards from the graveyard, and if they don't have any more cards in the graveyard, they lose the game. Another way I used Donate was with Delusions of Grandeur or Illusions of Grandeur, that where I gained 20 life when it entered the battlefield. Yep, you get to choose what card your opponent takes. So there's a card that says when it enters the battlefield, you gain 20 life. Delusions of Grandeur or Illusions of Grandeur. One, I forgot which one it was. I think it's Illusions of Grandeur. And so when that card comes in play, you gain 20 life. The drawback of it is Each turn you have to pay 2 mana, and you have to pay that 2 mana cumulatively. So the next turn after paying 2, you have to pay 4. After paying 4, you have to pay 6. After paying 6, you have to pay 8. If you can't pay it, the enchantment has to be sacrificed, and then you lose 20 life. So what you do is the Illusions of Grandeur come out, you gain 20 life, you use donate, you give it to the opponent. The opponent now has to pay for the costs to keep the card alive. If they don't keep the card alive, they lose 20 life. And most of the time, if they don't have any life gain, you got to win right there. Illusion of Mediocrity. I think the Mediocrity one was 10 life. And then Delusions of Grandeur was 20 life. Definitely Donate was a good combo card. Dying Whale. I remember this card. When enchanted creature is put into a graveyard from play, target player chooses and discards 2 cards from his or her hand. This is a world of spiteful wasps that sting and kill even as they die. So it looks like these Yavimaya elves are in some hive, and there was a wasp here that this elf is killing. However, you can see this elf got stung, and I don't think he's surviving because it looks like he got stung in the heart, and you can see the venom dripping from his fingers. Elvish Lookout. 1 mana, 1/1. Elvish Lookout can't be the target of spells or abilities. Like a masterful quilter, Yavimaya stitches together patches of color to warn its denizens of threats. The Yavimaya elves were very... what's the word I'm looking for? They're probably one of the most extreme-looking elves. They have elongated limbs. They're really skinny. Elvish Piper. This was a powerful card. 4 mana, 1/1. You can pay a green, tap it to put any creature from your hand directly into play. It was able to bypass counter spells. It was able to bypass mana costs of the creatures you're putting out. It was like Quicksilver Amulet on a creature. From Gaia grew the world, and the world was silent. From Gaia grew the world's elves, and the world was silent no more. Here we have the Piper. She's playing her flute or whatever instrument this is, and all these creatures are following her. We got a butterfly, some weird-looking bug, a little crocodile. Speaking of wasps, you pissed off a few of them a few days ago. You're fine, but you're scared to take out your recycling now. I know I have some paper wasps that live on my front porch. As long as I don't mess with them, they haven't messed with me. Yes, so much nostalgia. Urza's Destiny, like, I started playing Magic when Urza's Legacy was brand new. So these sets now that I'm reviewing are I was able to actually enjoy when they were current. Emperor Crocodile. 4 mana, 5/5 Crocodile. If you don't control any other creatures, you must sacrifice Emperor Crocodile. It was decent back in the day. Now there's just so much better creatures. 4 mana, 5/5 creatures that don't even have a drawback. So Emperor Crocodile suffers from its drawback compared to nowadays. It's an outdated card, unfortunately, but I love crocodiles. I love alligators. The artwork is amazing. Kev Walker's probably my second favorite artist who's done Magic the Gathering cards. Ron Spencer's my first, but Kev Walker's definitely my second. I don't know what kind of creatures these are, but the Emperor Crocodile is large, and he's about to feast on probably both of these because it looks like he can fist both in his jaws. Definitely my favorite card so far. The King of Yavamaya's Waters pays constant attention to his subjects and thrives on their adulation. Oh yeah, it's just what I mean. He might have a spiky beard under all this water that he's coming out from. I did win a couple games with Emperor Croc too. Encroach. Look at target player's hand and choose a non-basic land from it. That player must discard that card. The rate of spread in this region is unacceptable. Start again. Duvall's got a map, and it looks like he ripped part of the map off. When I first saw this card, though, I thought he was eating a giant Dorito, though, because the color and texture of the map reminds me of Doritos. Eradicate. This was a really cool removal spell. Remove target non-black creature from the game. So you're not even destroying it. You're exiling it, meaning you can remove an indestructible creature, a creature with regeneration. Those were hard to get rid of back in the day. That was a map in the prior card that Duvall was standing in front of. The artwork shows some Phyrexian troops forcing a contingent of Yavimaya elves into, I guess they're being executed and falling into a death pit. But not only do you remove the non-black creature from the game, you search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for all copies of that card. Most of the time it was up to 4. And remove them from the game. That player then shuffles his or her library. So your opponent's not ever going to be able to play that creature in that game again. Each color got a card that does an ability like Eradicate, but Eradicate's the best one in my opinion. Oh, I forgot about Extruder. 4 mana, 4/3 with Echo. You have to pay its mana cost a second time the turn after it comes out onto the play. You can sacrifice an artifact at any time to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. As the invasion drew closer, Urza's means began to resemble Phyrexia's end. And that flavor text means Urza was doing some pretty inhumane experiments, and some of his machines ended up, instead of being more humane looking, they almost ended up looking more Phyrexian. Like I said, when Urza had originally tried to face the Phyrexians by himself, he got his ass handed to him, and he actually some of the black Phyrexian mana ended up causing him to go mad, and he will, as we will see in the future, descend into even more madness. Yeah, I love the books. I wish they still kept up. I wish they still kept doing books and didn't get lazy and just go for little stories. Yes, Carlos. There's each set had a book attached to it for at least the first 30 sets of Magic, maybe even more than that. And I do say I have them to this day. I don't know how easy they are to find anymore, but they are. If you like fantasy, the fantasy genre, I highly recommend those books. Even if you don't play the card game, the stories are great. False Prophet. 2/2 Cleric for 4. If False Prophet dies, remove all creatures from the game. You live for Sarah's love. Will you not die for it? I guess this prophet's trying to get these followers to jump off a cliff with him. If you played this card, your opponent might stop attacking you if they have creatures that they want to keep out on the battlefield. Fake Jesus. I love that, Carlos. Every time I see this card now, I don't know how often I'm going to see it because I don't really play Magic anymore physically. I play Arena online, and they don't have a lot of these old cards, sadly. But if I ever see False Prophet again, I will refer to it as Fake Jesus, and I'll make sure to give you credit, Carlos. Fatigue. Target player skips their next draw step, meaning they don't get to draw a card. Mind if I just lie down right here for a few weeks? And we see all these wizards, they're just tired. Fend Off. It has cycling. Target creature deals no combat damage this turn. We got this big ogre or troll fighting this knight, and he is fending it off. The best defense is not to get hit. Festering Wound. I remember this card. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put an infection counter on Festering Wound. At the beginning of the upkeep of the enchanted creature's controller, Festering Wound deals X damage to that player, where X is the number of infection counters on Festering Wound. If you put it on one of your opponent's creatures and you make sure that creature doesn't die, especially if you put it on like a wall or a creature they have that they don't use to attack with, each turn the opponent's going to take more and more damage. No problem, Carlos. Glad to see you here, as always. And if you have any questions about Magic, if you want to learn anything about it, I would be more than happy to chat with you about it anytime in the Discord or whatnot. I love Festering Wound. I hope this card gets reprinted one day. It's probably one of my favorite black auras in the game. Later, Carlos. The artwork shows a plague dog of Phyrexia, and I don't know what slashed it, but this thing is in pain, and the wound is festering. And it's just like in reality, if you have a wound and you don't take care of it and it gets infected, you're going to just, it's going to poison your body, and you'll eventually die, as morbid as that sounds. Field Surgeon, another cleric. Tap an untapped creature you control. Prevent the next 1 damage to target creature this turn. Commanders order soldiers to attack. Field Surgeons order them to heal. Both are obeyed without question. I don't know what happened to this guy, but it does not look good. And I don't know why this Field Surgeon is smiling during the whole process. That's weird. I've seen Field Surgeon used in a variety of cleric decks. Magic is always what your mind comes to when hearing the word Fester because of that card. Magic has taught me a lot of vocabulary. I owe a lot to Magic for like my knowledge of like synonyms. I know like 20 ways to say anger because of Magic. Like it helped broaden my vocabulary very much so. Preventing damage is underrated. I remember I had a deck that had Urza's Armor and Barbed Wire. Barbed Wire did 1 damage to all players during each upkeep, and if I had Urza's Armors out, I would never take damage from the Barbed Wire. And I had also clerics like Field Surgeon prevent damage as well. Flame Jet. For 2 mana, you get to deal 3 damage to target player. However, it is a sorcery, but it does have cycling. Did the land make the Keldons? Did the Keldons make the land? Or were they simply meant for each other? I guess it would probably be too powerful if it targeted creatures too, but the fact that it is a sorcery, I think it would have been okay. Flobo learned English with Magic the Gathering and Diablo 1. I never played Diablo. All my friends did. I never did. Fledgling Osprey, 1/1 bird. It's a baby bird. When Fledgling Osprey gains flying as long as it's enchanted. It isn't truly born until its first flight. Unfortunately, as cute as this baby bird is, it's not a good card. This Flying Men is a way better card because they're a 1/1 for 1 blue with flying. You don't have to enchant them. There are a lot of fairies now and a lot of other 1/1s for 1 blue with flying. Fledgling Osprey is unfortunately just terrible. Rancor on it is really good. That is a good combo. I guess during its time, I didn't even think to use Rancor on it, Flobo. That is a really good idea for it. Turn 1, play the Osprey. Turn 2, throw Rancor on it, and you're attacking with a 3/1 with flying and trample. So that is pretty good. Good point, Flobo. Flicker. So we got this soldier here who looks like he got a mortal wound. He flickered out of existence and then came back in fresh as a daisy. Remove target non-token permanent from the game, then return it to play under its owner's control. Who is truer? You who are or you who are to be? That sounds like something Master Yoda would say. I remember when I first when I opened a pack of Urza's Destiny and Flicker was my rare, I was so disappointed because I'm like, I hate this card. It's not an instant, so that really you can't use it to save a creature from dying right then and there. The only way you can a good way to use Flicker is if you have a creature that has a enter the battlefield or leaves the battlefield effect that you can trigger an additional time. Then you can use it uh, if you have a creature that has +1/+1 counters or any other counters on it, and they don't have any more counters. If they come back in with those counters, you get those counters back. If they have an enchantment on them that you don't want to have, like Festering Wound, if you use Flicker on a creature with Festering Wound, the Festering Wound will go to the graveyard because the creature is no longer there. Then your creature comes back, and then you don't have to worry about that wound anymore. Yeah, Flicker did make a name for himself because after there would be a lot of cards that do this Flicker ability at instant speed now. So Flicker just got better as the years went by. Fodder Canyon for 4 mana, pay 4, tap it, sacrifice a creature. Fodder Cannon deals 4 damage to target creature. That's a lot of 4s. We have these goblins. I guess they're trying to figure out how to use this cannon. I guess he's climbing in because he has like a bullseye headband on. Step 1, find your cousin. Step 2, get your cousin in the cannon. Step 3, find another cousin. Funny flavor text. Gamekeeper. I forgot about this card. 4 mana, 2/2 elf. I like the little baby turtles that he's supervising. When Gamekeeper dies, you may remove it from the game. If you do, reveal cards from your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into play and put all other cards revealed this way into your graveyard. This was another, like, a cheap... not a cheap way, I should say, but it was another way to cheat your large creatures out on the battlefield. Especially if you don't even have them in your hand, you get one from the top of your library. You do have to be careful because you could reveal like a 1/1 elf or something like that, one of your mana dorks, and then like you don't really get the bang for your buck with Mana Keeper being exiled. But it really good synergies with this card. Spirit of the Night. I love that card. That was like, I mean, it wasn't truly Exodia because Exodia is supposed to be like, I think, an instant win in Yu-Gi-Oh! But it just felt good to get Feral Stalker or Night Stalker. What was it? Breath Stealer, Feral Shadow, and Urborg Stalker out on the field to then sacrifice them all to summon Spirit of the Night. I remember I used to actually cheat out Sliver Queen with Gamekeeper because I even used Sliver Queen without other slivers because by herself she's just awesome. 5 mana, 7/7, and you get a 1/1 token for 2 mana each time. Goblin Berserker, 4 mana, 2/2 with first strike and haste. Goblins don't know the meaning of the word tactics, or the word meaning for that matter. Fortunately, this goblin is heavily outdated. The 4 mana is slow for his for what he does. I think he is outdated. There are better goblins out there. I know there's a 3 mana 3/3 goblin with haste. He doesn't have first strike, but 3 mana 3/3 haste is really good compared to a 4 mana 2/2 first strike haste. Goblin Festival. It's an enchantment. You can pay 2. Goblin Festival deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Flip a coin. If you lose the flip, choose one of your opponents. That player gains control of Goblin Festival. What are we celebrating again? And it just shows a bunch of goblins getting drunk. Coin flip decks with Krark's Thumb. Amazing. Goblin Gardener. 4 mana, 2/1. When Goblin Gardener dies, destroy target land. Grow food and dirt, save time, eat dirt. You gotta love goblin logic, man. um, you can see how good he is at gardening. Goblin Marshal. This was a good card a long time ago. 6 mana, 3/3 Echo. When Goblin Marshal comes into play, or when he dies, put 2 1/1 Goblins tokens onto the field. And he has Echo. So for 6 mana, you get the 3/3 plus 2 1/1 Goblins. If you don't pay the Echo cost, then Goblin Marshal dies, but then you get 2 more 1/1 Goblins out on the battlefield. So back in the day, he was really good in Goblin decks. Especially Goblin Lackey. If Goblin Lackey hit the opponent and you got to put a Goblin from your hand into play, if you put Goblin Marshal out into play, it was almost like GG right there. If your opponent didn't have a Pyroclasm or any Wrath of God, if they lived to the 4th turn, then there was no stopping that Goblin onslaught. Goblin Masons. For 2 mana, 2/1. When he dies, destroy target wall. Goblins build with True Zeal and anything else within arm's reach. You can see that instead of a brick, he used a turtle, 2 books, a skull with eyes in it, and his Goblin kind of looks worried. I don't know what he's staring back at, if he's worried that no one sees that what materials he used for the wall. It's just funny. Goblins are funny. Goliath Beetle. 3 mana for a 3/1 with Trample. The balance of nature dictates that one day humans will be stepped on by bugs. I do wish that it actually kind of like showed Goliath Beetle's size. Because in the artwork, it just looks like a regular beetle. I think they should have put like maybe some people here, maybe like right here in this empty space, or maybe a building, something to give it a scale to show that the beetle is truly Goliath. But I do like my bugs. Heart Warden, 2 mana, 1/1. You can tap it to add 1 green mana to your mana pool, like most mana dorks. And if you don't need it anymore, you can pay 2, sacrifice it to draw a card. In Llanowar, we tend the forest boughs and branches. In Yavimaya, we are all part of them. Quote from Raffles. Hulking Ogre, 3 mana, 3/3. He cannot block. Who blocks with red anyway? Oh, you played the Heart Warden a lot, Flobo? The Keldon's Ogre campaign provided more body parts than my meager facility could properly use. Gatha, the Tolarian Renegade. Here we have some Keldons fighting the Ogre. Hunting Moa, 3 mana, 3/2 with Echo. When it comes into play or when it dies, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it can put a +1/+1 counter on itself. So you get 3 mana for 4/3, which is good. It has Echo, so if you are putting it on the Moa, you will want to pay the Echo cost. If you don't want to pay the Echo cost on the Moa, you get to put another +1/+1 counter on something else. I used Hunting Moa a lot. I like the artwork. It looks really good. Are Moas bird beasts now? Yes, they are. Good for errata. I like my birds. Illuminated Wings. 2 mana, enchanted creature gains flying. At any time you can pay 2 to sacrifice the wings to draw a card. For a moment, Urza thought not of war and destruction, but of the freedom of the skies. This is one of the first cards illustrated that have the Metathron. This is a Metathron soldier. This ends up being Urza's master race, so to speak. Blue skin, white hair. Stronger than a normal human being. They have pointy ears, so they kind of have some elf DNA involved with it. The artwork looks pretty good. But I never used any of those. A lot of these auras I never really used. Impatience for 3 mana. At the end of each player's turn, if that player did not play a spell, Impatience deals 2 damage to them. Ask a Keldon to hold his temper, and you'll be left holding your guts. That's another really good flavor text. This Keldon barbarian, I guess, wants his armor fixed, and this blacksmith is like, "Oh, hold on a second, have some patience." And looks like this guy does not have any patience. Incendiary, I do remember this. This is kind of like a red version of Festering Wound. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a fuse counter on Incendiary. When an enchanted creature is put into a graveyard, Incendiary deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of fuse counters on it. The artwork is like from an aerial view. It's essentially a bomb being dropped on these goblins who, I don't know what they were doing, camping, sitting out, but they look goofy. Jeff Lobenstein's artwork is kind of goofy, but it works with goblins. Iridescent Drake, 4 mana, 2/2 flying. When it comes into play, return target creature enchantment from your graveyard to play. You get to return target enchant creature card, so you can even take one from your opponents, and it enchants the Drake. Really good with the Eldrazi conscription card. The enchanted creature gets +10/+10 and Annihilator. It's also good with False Demise. When enchanted creature dies, it returns to your hand instead. And then False Demise will go to your graveyard, and then you just play the Drake again, and then False Demise would go from your graveyard back onto the Drake, and the Drake can never really die as long as False Demise is on it. Jameson loves his Drakes. He may not be great, but he'll always be his favorite creature, man. Yeah, Drakes are like lesser dragons, and they were more prevalent back in the day than they are now. I think it's rare to see a Drake card that's not from a core set. But they are really cool. I like Iridescent Drake a lot, but Emperor Crocodile still gets my vote for best card, or my favorite card in the set. Ivy Seer, the green Seer. Reveal any number of green cards from your hand. Target creature gets +X/+X until a turn where X is the number of cards revealed in this way. Jasmine Seer, the white one. Whatever number of white cards you reveal, you gain 2 life for each one. Junk Diver, 3 mana, 1/1 flying. When Junk Diver dies, return another artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Garbage in, treasure out. The artwork is really cool looking. I don't like that it's a rare. This card has actually been reprinted in Modern Horizons 3 as an uncommon. Which I think it should have been from the start. But this card can bring back any artifacts that you want. One at a time. Keldon Champion. Oh, I like this card a lot. 4 mana, 3/2 with Echo, but he also has haste. When he comes in play, he deals 3 damage to target player. So just by playing him, Keldon Champion does 3 to the player, and then it has haste. So if they don't have anything to block with, they're taking another 3. So you just paid 4 mana to deal 6 damage to your opponent, and that's really good. Even if you don't want to pay the Echo, you did 6 damage to your opponent. I think in my red decks back then, I had 4 Keldon Champions every time. I remember having Shivan Raptors out too, because they also have haste. And Goblin War Buggy as well. Turn 2, drop the 2/2 War Buggy. Turn 3, the Raptor. And turn 4, Keldon Champion. Emperor Crocodile, I still like, but I don't know. I do hate how bad Emperor Crocodile is nowadays. Tough choice. I'm going to have to choose Keldon Champion over Emperor Crocodile. Keldon Vandals. I almost thought this was a centaur, just because it almost looked like that this is a horse body, but it's actually another Keldon here. Three mana 4/1 with Echo. When they come into play, destroy target artifact. Keldons divide all their spoils into two groups: trophies and catapult ammunition. Yep, sideboard card for artifacts. Kingfisher, 4 mana 2/2 flying. When it dies, draw a card. It's tastiest when served with the fish it stole. Not my bird. Again, love the artwork. You can see a fisherman, he's pissed off because his line got his catch got stolen, or I don't know if this was his bait fish or the fish that he wanted on the hook, but the kingfisher stole his catch. I never used it though. I don't think I ever used kingfisher. Landslide, for 1 red, sacrifice any number of mountains to deal that much damage to target player. Sometimes the mountain takes, the Keldon's saying. And these goofy goblins are caught in this landslide. You can see the terror in this one's face. Really good game-winning card. If red suffers a lot from the late game, this is a good late-game finisher for red. Because most of the time, if your deck's built pretty well, and the opponent didn't have any life gain, and when you run out of gas, the opponent's probably going to be at like 8 life. This could finish the game for you. Lurking Jackals. It's one of those sleeper enchantments. It starts off as an enchantment for just 1 black. When one of your opponents has 10 life or less, Lurking Jackal becomes a 3/2 hound. Often it's not the hunter or the hunted, but the opportunist who thrives in wrath. So usually the center of the art is the actual creature, but the actual creature, the jackals, are up here. And they can see, I don't know what kind of... This looks like a Z-bot that we had, Jameson. I guess it's like a Phyrexian or something, and I don't know what this flying beast is, but it's it killed this thing, and the jackals are going to go in for the bits and pieces afterward. Magnify, for 1 green, all creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. The seed's torch's pollen gives off light, but as the elves find it heightens their senses as well. Yep, the brown one with the green cyborg eye. Mantis Engine. I love this card. 5 mana, 3/3. You can pay 2 to give it flying until end of turn. You can pay 2 to give it first strike until end of turn. Tawnos left a legacy of animal designs in many of Urza's creation. Mantises are among one of my favorite insect species. I love the giant mantis card, even though if it's just like a reprint of giant spider. But mantises are awesome. The card itself isn't that good. It's definitely outdated, but I love... Oh, I forgot about Marker Beetles. 3 mana, 2/3. When Marker Beetles dies, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Oh, I thought it was a +1/+1 counter. Pay 2, sacrifice 7 to draw a card. In case of emergency, crush bug. That's not nice for the bug boys. Mark of Fury. Enchanted creature gains haste. At the end of turn, return Mark of Fury to its owner's hand. Many Keldon warriors bear the mark of intentional insanity. Mask of Law and Grace. Enchanted creature gets protection from black and red. This black and red, once like against white, was such an uphill battle back then because there wasn't a lot that they could do once they had protection. The archangels zealously drove Sarah's light into every corner of their new home as if their creator still commanded them. This card alone, well, I shouldn't say alone because you have to put it on one of your creatures, but this helped me win against a lot of black and red decks that I had no business of winning against. Because they couldn't kill my creature, and then once I would just keep... They couldn't even block the creature, now I was able to attack through. Master Healer, 5 mana, 1/4. Tap it, prevent the next 4 damage to target creature or player this turn. It does sound costly, but once he's on the field, he neutralizes a big threat. He shuts down red because a lot of red spells are going to do like 3 to 5 damage at a time. And if Master Healer's around, he's going to negate that damage. And that is very game breaking against red. Behind his eyes is the pain of every soldier his hands have healed. That's pretty morbid. He looks happy in the art. Oh, here's another tournament winning card. Mastercore, 4 mana, 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you must discard a card from your hand. If you don't, you have to sacrifice the Mastercore. Pay 2, he deals 1 damage to target creature, and he can also regenerate for 2. I think this was also in the Kai Bud deck, if I'm not mistaken. I hated fighting this card. I don't even think I ever got a real one. I did get a gold bordered one that I never used. But I was almost never able to beat this card. The fact that it has regeneration and that it could just ping one of your creatures to death. If you give it Death Touch, just scoop. I mean, nowadays it's easier to handle with, but what a destructive card. Mental Discipline. For 3 mana, you can pay 2 and discard a card from your hand to draw a card. So this essentially gives your any card in your hand cycling. I appreciate that, Flobo. I'm glad that I have I'm going through the same thing because I haven't looked at these cards in a long time. I didn't do any research prior to this video. I didn't look up the cards ahead of time. I'm only going from core memories, and a lot of stuff has slipped my mind or brings back memories that I normally wouldn't have thought of. Baron drowned his doubts about Urza's project by delving even deeper into its details. Metalworker. This is a very valuable card. 3 mana, 1/2. Tap it, reveal any number of artifact cards in your hand. Add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool for each card revealed in this way. At this rate, I fully expect to be replaced by a Clockwork Golem by year's end. Baron. This card for artifact decks is extremely powerful. If you get this guy out on the 2nd turn or 3rd turn, Grim Monolith can easily do it. And let's say you have 4 or 5 artifacts in your hand. The next spell you can cast for 10 mana. You can Eldrazi you could throw out with this guy. I mean, the Eldrazi are not artifact creatures. You definitely have to have artifacts in your hand in order for Metalworker to work. But we have every color of artifact lands out now, so that's easily doable. This card is worth a lot of money, too. This site, Scryfall, says it's $122, and that sounds about right. I do have one. Metatron Elite, 3 mana, 2/3. He's unblockable as long as he's enchanted. Now, this is a better creature that, as long as it's enchanted, it matters. So he'll become unblockable. If the eyes are windows to the souls, their souls are not of this world. I'm surprised as important as the Metatron were, they did not get a lot of cards. They were featured on a lot of artwork, but a lot of them did not get a lot. Metatron Soldier. I won a lot of games with this one. 2 mana, 1/1, unblockable. Just as Sarah crafted Angels of Light and Faith, Urza constructed an army of sorcery and power to resist the coming invasion. Yep, Rancor with him as well. There's a card that's going to be coming up in this video called Sigil of Sleep. I would put Sigil of Sleep on him, and my opponent would hate me. And I'll go more over that once Sigil of Sleep shows up. Oh, I forgot about this card. Momentum. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a growth counter on Momentum. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each growth counter on Momentum. So you could put Momentum on the Metatron Soldier, and every turn he gets bigger, and the opponent's not going to be able to block him if they don't have any removal spells. GG. Moltani's Decree. Destroy all enchantments. You gain 2 life for each enchantment destroyed in this way. Really good in a group game. This is my place of power. Nothing can take root here unless I allow it. Some raptors in the background. Nightshade Seer. This was my favorite of the 5 seers. Reveal any number of black cards in your hand. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards revealed in this way. Opalescence. Each other global enchantment is a creature with power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost. It still counts as an enchantment. This turns your enchantments that aren't on creatures into creatures. Opposition. Tap an untapped creature you control to tap target artifact, creature, or land. I used to use this with Horseshoe Crab because you can pay a blue and untap the Horseshoe Crab, and you can tap at your heart's desire as long as you have the mana to do so. That seer looked like Neil Patrick Harris. Oh my god, you're right, Jameson. Nightshade Seer did. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to player, return target creature that player controls to its owner's hand. Yep, you are describing Sigil of Sleep perfectly, Flobo. Urza says he's sane, perhaps, but measures of sanity among planeswalkers are hard to come by. From Baron. And they do say if people who are immortal eventually struggle with insanity because they're not meant to live as long as they do. And a lot of times insanity stems from some sort of trauma. And if you're immortal, at some point you're going to experience some trauma in your life. And Urza has experienced some trauma. But he has caused a lot of trauma too. As you can see them arguing. Pattern of Rebirth. When an enchanted creature dies, that creature's controller may search their library for a creature and put that card directly into play. That player does, they shuffle your library. It's like a weaker Defense of the Heart, but it is really good. The opponent might not want to kill your creature because then you can search for any creature you want and put it on the battlefield. You can get Eldrazi out and put them out. You can get Darksteel Colossus. You can get, I'm not going to say Big Furry Monster because you need 2 sides to cast Big Furry Monster. But the power to search your deck for any creature is so good. Phyrexian Monitor, 4-mana 2/2 with regeneration. He's a skeleton? He doesn't look like a skeleton at all. He should be a Phyrexian. Okay, he's a Phyrexian skeleton. That's fair enough. Being one would be an honor if the word honor had any meaning in Phyrexia. Yes, you're right. Oh, nowadays, he is totally outclassed by Phyrexian Obliterator. But he was a beatstick back in the day. 3 mana for a 5/5 trample. Phyrexian Negator. These are probably the most powerful at the time in the story. Phyrexian's most powerful soldiers. When Phyrexian Negator is dealt damage, you have to sacrifice a permanent for each 1 damage that was dealt to it. They exist to seize. You would definitely have to run your deck full of removal spells and make sure your opponent did not really have a lot of creatures with high power. And then you'd be able to safely swing with the Negator. Because the drawback could really, really, really hurt you. Yeah, Dark Ritual, facing a Negator on turn 1 was really tough. Playing against red with the Negator was a big gamble because even if they shock it, then you have to sacrifice 2 permanents. Plague Dogs, 5 mana, 3/3. When Plague Dogs die, all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn, and you can pay 2 mana to sacrifice them to draw a card. They're not just retrievers, they're carriers. You can see I don't know how this plague, I guess it climbed up there, but there's one in the background. And they're spreading their Phyrexian plague across the lands. They look really cool. I do like the artwork on them better than Keldon Champion, but Keldon Champion still is the superior card. Plated Spider, 5 mana 4/4. It has reach, means it can block creatures with flying. Most spiders wait patiently for their prey to arrive. Most spiders aren't 40 feet tall. And this is a drake that the spider is feasting on. I love the artwork. Shout out to Ron Spencer, my favorite artist. A bit slower than the giant spider, but more powerful. And it looks like either an elf or a human was trapped in its webs here. Plow Under, 5 mana. Put 2 target lands on top of their owner's library. This severely crippled deck set relied on playing large spells. To renew the land, plow the land. To destroy the land, do nothing. A druid's saying. I did a dirty combo with this card. There's in one of the Mirrodin sets, there's a card called Panoptic Mirror. It's cost 5. When it enters the battlefield, you exile a card in your hand, as long as it's a sorcery or an instant. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you can pay the mana cost of the spell that you exiled to cast a copy of it. And I would just, every turn I would use Plow Under, and that would take 2 lands from my opponent and put it on top of their deck. They're going to draw the lands, and then each time they can only play 1 land a turn. Eventually, they're not going to have any lands out on the battlefield. Mono Green Stompy can be a control deck. It can. That's the beauty of Magic. You can make any kind of deck you want, regardless of if it's powerful. If you have fun doing it, I even made a spider deck in a tournament or for Friday Night Magic. And I even came out I think I got 4th place out of 25 people with it. I have more fun building decks and using decks that aren't mainstream, that weren't net decks, than I do winning the games. Powder Keg. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a fuse counter on Powder Keg. You tap it and sacrifice it. Destroy each artifact and creature with converted mana cost equal to the number of fuse counters on Powder Keg. A lot of time bomb cards in this set. 1999, I think it was. Or that's when Destiny came out. Private Research. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a page counter on Private Research. When enchanted creature is put into a graveyard, draw a card for each page counter on Private Research. That's really good, actually. For just 1 blue mana, and you can refill your hand in the right condition. This shows Gatha doing Private Research against Urza's Orders. Quash. Excuse me. Counter Dang, excuse me. Counter-target instant or sorcery spell searches controller's graveyard, hand, and library for all copies of the card and remove it from the game. That player then shuffles their library. Just like we went over Eradicate, this is the blue version, which counters an instant or sorcery. This card kind of killed combo decks, because a lot of combo decks usually use either a creature in a sorcery, or a creature in an instant, or a creature in an enchantment. Quash will stop the combo if it's an instant or sorcery, and it'll most cripple the deck that uses it. Because a lot of combo decks, if you can't get the combo off, then it's like a one-trick pony. It can't pull a win off after it. Rapid Decay. Remove from the game up to 3 target cards in a graveyard, and it has cycling. I don't know why this card's a rare. This is probably the crappiest rare in the entire set. This is even crappier than the one card, Circle of... I forgot what it was called. The card with Duval on it. The grave robbers arrived the day after the burial. They were a day too late. I guess, it definitely is good against Necro. Maybe that's why they made it. I don't know if if Necro decks were a problem back then, and this was just a good answer against it. But I hate that it's a rare. At least it has cycling, but I do hate that it's a rare. Ravenous Rats. 2 mana, 1/1. When the rats come into play, target opponent chooses and discards a card from their hand. For all the priceless tomes they have destroyed, one would think they would taste better. Deval, the Evankar Rat. Rats and Magic are something to not take lightly, especially with the discard. Here's Rain, the Academy Chancellor, Baron's wife, and Hannah's mother. Whenever you or a permanent you control is the target of a spell or ability controlled by one of your opponents, you may draw a card. If Rain has an enchantment on her, you get to draw an additional card. I think for Commander-wise, I have a friend that does use her for the Commander, and it turns out pretty well for him. She ends up being killed later on during the Phyrexian invasion. Sadly, a lot of characters do, but I'm not going to spoil things further until we get to closer to those sets. Reckless Abandon. As an initial cost to play Reckless Abandon, sacrifice a creature. You get to deal 4 damage to target creature or player. The climax of a warlord's career is always death. So this ogre and this Keldon fell off a cliff, but he's still wanting to kill him. They know they're both going to die. This is good, I think, in like a goblin deck. You can say one of your tokens, if you have a way of putting token. Goblin Grenade 1.5. You could use it on any creature. Like I said, if you have like the Goblin Marshal, you still have one of your Goblin tokens floating around. After attacking with everything, you can sacrifice one of those for just 1 red, and you get to deal 4 damage to any target. Really powerful card. Reliquary Monk. 3 mana, 2/2. When he dies, destroy target artifact or enchantment. A thing of Sarah's realm exists only by the grace of her followers' faith. And his holy power destroyed the Silix. Repercussion. One of the most powerful red enchantments in the game today. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. Not all Keld's warriors are found on the battlefield. You could even see the women and children are ready to fight, and they are stacked with weapons. But one of the reasons why what makes Repercussion so good, a lot of games, especially if you're playing a red burn deck, choosing when to use the burn spells on your opponent's creatures or your opponent's life total is crucial if you want to for successful burn decks. You have to know when to throw the damage at your opponent and when to throw the damage at creatures if you want to survive. If you have Repercussion out, that makes that choice much easier. You can comfortably burn your opponent's creatures, and all the damage your opponent's creatures took also goes to them. Now, the card also affects you. If you have creatures out and they take damage, you're also taking that amount of damage. But a lot of burn decks, their creatures don't really last long on the battlefield anyways. This is also good if you have creatures that have a lot of power. Even if the opponent blocks your creatures, all the damage that your creatures deal to their creatures, the opponent is still taking. So this kind of makes blocking mute, because even if the only time they're going to block your creatures is if they want to kill your creatures. But just as I said, this works for all players, so it could backfire on you. So you definitely have to be careful when you need to build the deck around Repercussion, but that's still how powerful Repercussion is. Yep, whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. And that's why I believe it's one of the best red cards for burn decks in the game. Replenish. For 4 mana, return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to play. This is another enchantment matters. Rescue for 1 blue. Return target permanent you control to your hand. Urza, I've discovered more promising students than you and my husband have combined, and I haven't lost a single one. Rain is the conscience of Tolarian Academy. She's constantly disagreeing with Urza because Urza is the way Urza gets his DNA for his experiments. He's not truthful to the DNA that he's harvesting. He lies to certain communities about getting there, and I don't even know why he has to lie. I guess if he explains like there's an invasion going on, maybe it would cause a panic. I don't remember exactly why he does what he does, but to him it's just normal behavior. But to Baron and Rain, they're like, how could you do such a thing? And as Urza descends into madness, this is a byproduct of it. Here's a very powerful green card. Raphaelos, the Llanowar Emissary, for 2 green. He's a 2/1 elf. He is the best mana maker, I think, in the game today. You can tap him to add 1 green mana to your mana pool for each forest you control. So without any other mana makers, on your second turn you have 2 forests out. You cast Raphaelos. If Raphaelos survives, on your third turn, play another forest. You have 3 forests out, and then he taps for 3 green. So on the third turn, you can cast something for 6 mana. That's really powerful. And Raphaelos was a staple in a lot of green stompy ramp decks. And he's, on average, according to the site, $24, rightfully so. Raphaelos is... I did not know Raphaelos is banned in Commander. Okay. That kind of hurts him nowadays, but I did not know he was banned in Commander. Raphaelos' Gift. For 1 green, reveal any number of green cards in your hand. Return an enchantment from your graveyard to your hand for each revealed in this way. Rise, elf. We are both of Gaia, and thus we are equal. Multanita Raphaelos. Sanctimony. Whenever one of your opponents taps a mountain, you may gain 1 life. This definitely hosed red decks. Sideboard card for red. To forgive our enemies is to forgive ourselves. Just like there were 5 seers, there are 5 instants that kind of mirror the ability of those seers. Like Brine Seer was the first of the 5 cycle that we saw. So Scent of Brine is the first of that. Revealing a number of blue cards in your hand. Counter target spell unless the controller pays 1 for each revealed in this way. I personally like the Scent of Brine. I love the smell of the ocean air. Here's Scent of Cinder. Does X damage to target creature player, where X is the number of cards revealed in this way. The Scent of Fire, it's okay. Sometimes it's too strong. Scent of Ivy. I love the smell of ivy in most plants. This gives the target creature +X until in turn where X is the number of cards revealed in this way. Scent of Jasmine. Jasmine is very therapeutic, and you can see why. As this healer, I use Scent of Jasmine a lot in life gain decks. And Scent of Nightshade. I've never personally smelled Nightshade. I know it's a toxic plant. I don't even know if I want to smell it. But these elves, unfortunately, did smell it. Excuse me. Scour. Oh, I forgot how mad this priest was. This removes an enchantment from the game, and you get to search the graveyard, hand, and library for all copies of the enchantment and remove them from the game. Scrying Glass. There's Gatha looking at his reflection. Choose a number greater than 0 and a color. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. If that opponent reveals exactly the chosen number of cards of the chosen color, you draw a card. That's a weird. I've never seen this card, or I've never seen it used. It's weird. Sounds like it looks like a card that would be used in Unglued. Sarah Advocate, 4 mana, 2/2 angel with flying. Target attacking or blocking creature gets +2/+2 into end of turn. An angel's touch can prepare a soldier for battle more than 1,000 military drills. Excuse me. Here's the card, Sigil of Sleep. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to a player, return target creature that player controls to its owner's hand. Arrows are only one way to remove an enemy. I put this on the Metatron Soldier, as I mentioned earlier. My creature's unblockable. He's got to get through to the opponent. If he damages the player, I get to return a creature they control to their hand. So if that's their only creature they have out, that creature is constantly going to get returned to their hand. And it won me a lot of games. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. Skittering Horror. 3 mana for a 4/3. If you play a creature spell, you must sacrifice the Skittering Horror. This monstrosity will do for now. I do like the card. I used it a lot. I had a black deck that just used a lot of removal cards, and I didn't really have a lot of creatures in it, so Skittering Horrors, 3 mana, 4/3, I never really had to sacrifice it. I would just have it die in combat, and then I'd play creatures afterwards. Kind of like Spine Fluke. Slinking Scourge, 4 mana, 2/1 flying. He has the Cycling 2.0, as Flobo called it. Deval encouraged the Scourges. They made excellent sentries and were quite edible if properly seasoned. Why does Deval care about food so much? That's like the third food reference that Deval has said in this set. I guess that was a reoccurring theme. Solidarity. 4 mana. Creatures you control get +5 toughness until end of turn. Their commitment to Sarah is as solid as any shield. This card is good in decks that use where creatures deal damage with their toughness instead of their power. I was talking about food, and I completely forgot that this card existed. And we have Deval himself sitting at the table. The card is Soul Feast. It costs 5 mana. It's a sorcery. Target player loses 4 life, and you gain 4 life. It was a pretty good card. It's like direct damage for black while sustaining you at the same time. As no one has ever accepted a second invitation to Deval's table, the Evankar often dines alone. It's outdated. I think it's a little bit outdated by today's standards. 5 mana for 4. Oh yeah, Corrupt is extremely better. I love Corrupt. I've won so many games with Corrupt. Soul Feast, I guess, would be the poor man's Corrupt, or if you have a deck that's not all black, you can splash other colors and get away with using Soul Feast. Sowing Salt destroys a non-basic or removes a non-basic land from the game and removes all copies of it. It's part of that exile cycle. Splinter. I like the artwork with this because it's showing these, I assume, roots. Stabbing these Phyrexians. This is the exile target artifact from the game and all copies of it. Really good against artifact strategies. Oh, I forgot about this card. Squirming Mass. 2 mana, 1/1. Can't be blocked except by artifact and black creatures, so it has fear. Only the coldest hearts and the strongest stomachs can stand against it. Is it a ooze or just a horror? Oh, I think it should be a horror ooze. That's what it looked like. It looks like it should be a horror ooze instead of just a horror. Storage Matrix. As long as Storage Matrix is untapped, instead of each player untapping permanents he or she controls during their untap step, that player chooses artifacts, creatures, or lands and only untaps permanents of the chosen type that they control. Yeah, we need to errata the Squirming Mass. It needs to be a horror ooze. Storage Matrix is an epic card. It definitely slows the game down. Here's another epic card. Taunting Elf. A 0-1 for 1 green. All creatures able to block him do so. Why is that so good? Well, if all your opponent's creatures are forced to block the Taunting Elf, all your other creatures that are attacking are guaranteed to hit your opponent if the opponent doesn't have any removal spells on them. Because your opponent can have 500 creatures to block with. If you attack with one Taunting Elf and the rest of your force, all 500 of the opponent creatures have to block the Taunting Elf, and they can't block any other creatures. Means the remainder of your force is unblockable and guaranteed to hit your opponent. Much to Moltani's chagrin, Ruffalo's gleefully tutored Yavamaya's elves on the rudest and most vulgar words spoken in Llanowar. We could see this cat beast behind this taunting elf has had enough. Taunting Elf wins so many games. He was ridiculous back in the day. I don't know if this card will ever be reprinted. I'm sure it was reprinted once or twice. Oh, it was reprinted in Onslaught. Duh. Okay. But since then, he hasn't really been reprinted, to my knowledge. Telepathic Spies. 3 mana 2/2. When they come into play, look at target opponent's hand. Do not try to keep an open mind. Or do try to keep an open mind, would you? Knowing what your opponent has in their hand is knowledge is... I know it's a cliche, but knowledge is power, or knowledge is half the battle. Knowing what your opponent has in the hand completely, it gives you a sense of security that you could comfortably play certain cards that you normally might not play. I know some people's play styles are just go for broke, just play as much as you can, overwhelm your opponent on the field, but sometimes that's a mistake. If your opponent is using control, like Wrath, that was one of my biggest rookie mistakes. I would just, if I had like 5 creatures on the battlefield, I would still keep playing creatures, even if my opponent didn't have like ways to block it. And then my opponent would cast Wrath of God. I would lose all my creatures, and then I'd be forced to top decking because I played out my entire army in one go, while they played more carefully and strategically. Oh, this was a powerful card back in the day. Temporal Adept. 3 mana, 1/1. Pay triple blue and tap it to return target permanent to its owner's hand. You could return your opponent's land. You could return an enchantment, a creature. You could return a planeswalker to its owner's hand with this card. Planeswalkers didn't exist back then as cards, but you get the idea. Of course, she's at the head of her class. All of her classmates have disappeared. Gather the Tolarian Renegade. I actually used this card in a Two-Headed Giant tournament. Two-Headed Giant is a team game where you and your teammate share life totals against 2 other opponents with a shared life total. Oh yeah, Trade Wind Rider. I remember him too. He was in Weatherlight? Yeah, I think Weatherlight. Or maybe Tempest. But regardless, they do the same thing, and they do it well. Tethered Griffin. 1 white for a 2/3 flying. If you don't control any enchantments, you must sacrifice Tethered Griffin. Poorly trained griffins sometimes attack the noble audiences that gather to watch their progress. Well, you can't really cast it on the first turn because if you don't have any enchantments out, you have to sacrifice it. I don't think there are any enchantments that cost 0. But it's still a good aggressive creature for just 1 white. 1 white for a 2/3 flying. White is one of the most enchantment prevalent creatures. The only thing for Rancor Flobo is you can't cast the Griffin and then put Rancor on it, because if you cast the Griffin and don't have any other enchantments out, you have to sacrifice the Griffin, and then you don't have an opportunity to put Rancor on it. You have to have another enchantment out on the battlefield for a Tethered Griffin to be viable. Back then, it was very aggressive too. Still in that manner. You could put a different 1-drop. Let's Taunting Elf, and then put Rancor on Taunting Elf, and then on the next turn, then you can play the Griffin. And then if you have another Rancor or whatever else, you could put on the Griffin. I know I've seen this Griffin win games before. Thieving Magpie, another one of my favorite birds. 4 mana, 1/3 flying. When Thieving Magpie deals damage to your opponent, draw a card. Rain once made several unkind comparisons between the birds Naked Opportunism and Urza's. Oh man. This card brings back some memory. I hope this card gets reprinted in Standard today. Duels of the Planeswalker. 10th edition was the last time he was reprinted. Thorn Elemental. When I first saw this card, I couldn't believe it existed. The artwork is phenomenal, and its ability is so much better. So in the prior set, we talked about Lone Wolf. 2/2, that if he became blocked, you could still have him deal damage to the opponent as though he wasn't blocked. Thorn Elemental does the same thing, but he is a whopping 7/7 for 7 mana. Rain from the Storm leaves you pinned to the ground like an insect. I could just imagine this lumbering pile of thorns walking through wherever you are, walking a field, holding his hands out, shooting thorns all over the place. I've lost so many games against my friends because of this card. I'd be at like 5 life and they play the Thorn Elemental, and then on the next turn, it doesn't matter what I'd block with. If I didn't have a way to kill it, it was dealing the 7 damage to me too. Oh yeah, the 10th edition foil looks cool too. He looks more skeletal in that one. Let's see if I can pull it up. There he is. There's the 7th edition foil. This is a more frontal point of view where the thorns are going to come out at you. He looks more demonic in this artwork. Great card. Great card. Thrawn Dynamo, 4 mana. Tap it to add 3 colors mana to your mana pool. Another one, Ramping Artifacts. Eldrazi decks would really love this card. Urza's Metatron children were conceived, birthed, and nurtured by an integrated system of machines. Excuse me. Thrawn Foundry. Pay 1, tap it, remove it from the game. Target player shuffles their entire graveyard into their library. What we do not use up, we use again. Thrawn Golem, 5 mana, 3/3. If Thrawn Golem is enchanted, it gets +2/+2, flying, first strike, and trample. Another good Rancor target. Karn felt more secure about his value to Urza when he realized that he did not need regular trimming. Tormented Angel, 4 mana for a 1/5 flyer. Falling from heaven is not as painful as surviving the impact. You can see she has a lot of battle scars on her thighs and her legs. And her face, she is not a happy angel. Her robes are tattered too. Not really that good of a card, though, unfortunately. Treachery. This was another good card from the set. When it comes into play, you untap up to 5 lands, so as long as you have 5 mana, then it's like a free spell. Whatever creature you put this on, you end up gaining control of that creature. The Academy educates. I employ. It's a perfect arrangement. Gather the Tolarian Renegade. This is when he walks out on Urza. You can see Urza in the background pointing at him, telling him to get the hell out of here. And when blue has untapped lands and cards in hand, you are setting yourself up for counterspell. Blue's most powerful answer to everything, as long as the spell can be countered. Trumpet Blast. Attacking creatures get power +2 until end of turn. Keldon Warriors don't need signals to tell them when to attack, but when to stop. Cards like this would get massively reprinted and recycled for red, even in Magic's future. It's a good game winner if your strategy is to swarm your opponent. I forgot about this one. Twisted Experiment. Enchanted creature gets +3 power, but -1 defense. Gatha showed remarkable prowess in increasing his subject's stature. Their lifespans, however, were another matter. God, this thing looks weird. I don't even know how this thing could stand up with such a hulking mass of back muscle. But Gatha looks pleased with himself. No wonder he got kicked out of Urza's academy. Urza's Incubator. This is a really good spell for tribal decks, especially if you're using a tribe where the creatures are somewhat mana expensive, like dragons, giants, Eldrazi. When Urza's Incubator comes into play, choose a creature type. Creature spells of the chosen type cost 2 less to play. Stop thinking like an artificer, Urza, and start thinking like a father. Rain is nagging Urza once again. Now, this does help your opponent out, too. So if your opponent is using the same deck that you are, as far as if it's like dragons versus dragons, this will help them out, too. So you do have to be careful about that. The chance of that happening is slim, but it's not impossible. Voice of Duty, 4 mana 2/2 angel, flying, protection from green. Next to law is duty, and duty must be obeyed. If the frame of duty is broken, none shall weave life's fabric. Voice of Reason, it's the protection from blue angel. Next to grace is reason, and reason must be retained. If the web of reason becomes unwoven, madness will escape. Song of All. This voice of reason looks blissful. Wake of Destruction. For 6 mana, destroy target land and all ant lands with the same name as that land. Land charred black, rivers boiled. Crops and wells alike despoiled. Mountains leveled, forests felled. Footprints of the beasts of Keld. Well, whoever these warriors are, rest in peace to them, because they just got annihilated. If you destroy a plains, you destroy all plains that are in play. This card shut down any monocolored strategy. If you target a mountain with it, you do have to be careful because you're going to destroy your own mountains too. Because it doesn't matter who controls these lands, all those lands are going to the graveyard. Wall of Glare, my favorite wall in the entirety of Magic. It's a 0/5 and it can block any number of creatures each combat. This is one of the few cards that can kind of shut down Taunting Elf's ability, because under normal Magic rules, only one creature could only block one creature. Wall of Glare stops that, throws that rule out the window, and it can block any number of creatures that come combat. You can attack with the 500 creatures, and Wall of Glare is blocking all of them. Wall of Glare might not survive it. However, I would usually give Wall of Glare either indestructibility, protection. There's in the next set after this, I think, is Mercadian Masks. there's an enchantment that says prevent all damage dealt to enchanted creature, I would just throw that on Wall of Glare, and I would block everything all day long. I shouldn't say everything, though. Wall of Glare has a drawback. It cannot block creatures with flying unless you give it flying. So that was the only, I guess, downside to Wall of Glare, but it's still, I think, one of my favorite walls in the entire game of Magic. The Blinding Barrier served Benalia better than 100 shields. We can see these Keldons, they can't even get close because they're blinded by how bright the wall is. Wild Kolos. We saw Kolos Yearling earlier in the stream. Here's the adult giant goat. 3 mana, 2/2 haste. You'll never get a Keldon's goat. Yavimaya Elder. 3 mana for a 2/1. When Yavimaya Elder dies, you may search your library for 2 basic lands and put them into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library. And you can also sacrifice them to draw a card. So you draw a card from him, and then you get 2 forests or 2 basic lands from your deck and put them into your hand. So you get 3 cards for his death. I think that's worth it a lot. He was probably one of the best cards that had the cycling 2.0 ability, as Flobos quoted. All right, we are pretty much done. I think we have like 2 cards left to look at. Yavimaya Enchantress, 3 mana, 2/2. She gets +1/+1 for each enchantment in play. From each seed, a world. From each world, 1,000 seeds. If you just even have 1 Rancor on him, or on her, I should say, she becomes a 5/3 with trample because she gets +1/+1 from the Rancor itself. You know, Flobo, I was thinking that, but I didn't want to sound weird, but I'm going to agree with you wholeheartedly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Her pose is, and the artwork is phenomenal for her. Who's your commander in EDH for where you use Yavimaya Elder? Yeah, I know I'm weird. I take that as a compliment. Better to be weird than generic and boring. Oh, I forgot about Yavimaya Hollow. This is a really good land. It taps for a colorless, and you can pay a green and tap it, regenerate target creature. For all its traps and defenses, Yavimaya has its havens too. You have a guy from Ravnica as your commander. Let's see what all animals here we got. Hungry hippos. We have this weird moose-looking thing, and I'm not sure what this is either. It's like a cat with the head of a horse. Anyway, really good land. And the final card, I think this is the final card of the set, and a very powerful card indeed. Yawgmoth's Bargain. For 6 mana, skip your draw step, pay 1 life to draw a card. He craves only 1 commodity. So with this card, it's like a redone Necropotence. A lot of people used what was the Scourge? Scourge Familiar, where you would discard a card from your hand to add 1 black mana to your mana pool. And then you would you discard 5 cards to add 5 black mana to your mana pool. Then you would pay like 5 life to draw 5 new cards. Discard those 5, you add 5 more black, so now you have a total of 10 black. Pay 5 more life, draw 5 more cards. Hopefully you ended up drawing a Drain Life, where you could all the black mana that you have made, you can cast into 1 giant Drain Life spell. Drain that much life from your opponent. I think it would be like 13 life at that point. You gain 13 life. Your opponent loses 13 life. This will put you back up to close to 20, a little bit higher than 20. And then you can repeat the process. Pay 10 life, draw 10 cards, do the same thing, but you had to have the Scourge out in order to get the mana to do it. And you could see it's banned in Legacy, banned in Commander. I'm not sure what format Oathbreaker is, but because it got banned so much, it lost its worth. And that wraps up Urza's Destiny. We will go back to my favorite card in the set. Keldon Champion. Yasova Dragonclaw is your commander, Flobo. Pretty good, really good commander. I think he was originally from Tarkir, but he was they brought him in Ravnica. Well, friends, this will end the stream for Urza's Destiny. This completes the Urza block. We are now going to go forward in time where we left off the events. Gerard and his crew end up escaping Wrath. They saved Takara. They saved Captain Sisay. They did leave Urtai and they did leave Krovax behind. Krovax has turned full vampire now. And Urtai was apprehended by the Phyrexians, by Commander Grevin. And we will end up in the next set, Mercadian Masks. This is where we find out what happened to Gerard, where he ends up. Gerard is of Urza's creation as like the a superhuman without looking superhuman. He's not full Metatron, but his genes were manipulated to be like the perfect human being. Almost like Captain America, but he doesn't have close to the super strength that he does. And then the Weatherlight ship Urza had built, we had seen him create it in the Urza Saga and Urza's Legacy block. And then we will see where everybody ended up and how the story continues to unfold. Now that we have delved in the past, we are still going to be in the past, so to speak, but the storyline is moving on to the present and what this means, who will come out on top between Urza's forces, Dominaria as a whole versus Phyrexia. So until next time, Flobo, thank you for being here for the majority of the stream. James and Carlos, thank you for your inputs as well. I do appreciate it. I love the game. I love talking about it. If anybody has any stories to share about Urza's Destiny, any cards they used, any combos they'd like to use, feel free to list it in the comment section below. Until next time, claim your destiny, and I will see you guys next week. Take care. Have a great night.